Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Where You're Planted podcast. So thrilled and excited to have you all here listening, watching the video, and joining me on today's episode. I just wanted to apologize for this episode being a little bit later than I had planned for it to come out. I think I'm going to hit my goal of 2 episodes. Actually, it has been a crazy couple of weeks for me at work, and so I was feeling very overwhelmed and I was drawn in so many different directions, and so I just didn't have time to get to recording an episode, just so I'd have it in time. But I think I can still make before the end of the month. But we are very quickly approaching the end of Q1. Actually, maybe by the time you're listening to this, it is the last day of the first quarter. And so it sort of motivated me to talk about, just kind of stay on theme with other things I've been talking about this month, which is the idea of motivation and just this sort of energy around the end of the first quarter of the year. So, but like sort of related to that, I wanted to talk about something that it's been like top of mind for me for as long as I've been aware of it. And I think a lot of us maybe sort of feel the same way, but we've just maybe never really had the opportunity to put voice to it. And it's just this phenomenon of rest feeling uncomfortable and why it makes us feel guilty, why it feels quote unquote unproductive, even when we need it. And I think it especially around this time of the year, we're in winter, we're approaching the end of Q1. Motivation isn't as high it was probably in January. And, maybe we've fallen off of certain habits that we promised ourselves that we were going to stick to at the top of the year. And maybe we're just not on top of things as we were at the start of the year. And then instead of responding to that dip in motivation, that discipline not being the way it was, instead of responding to that with curiosity and gentleness, I think we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We tell ourselves that we need to get back on track, that we need to be more disciplined, that we're wasting time, and that rest is foolish, rest is for the weak. But what if the discomfort around rest, especially when we need it, isn't actually about the idea of rest itself? What if it's like something that we've learned and we've internalized from childhood, from youth, from media, from what society tells us rest should or should not be? So that's sort of what I want to explore today within the framework of we're approaching the end of Q1. Most of us, I feel like a lot of people start the year off making certain goals and promises to themselves, but now we're at the end of Q1 and it's possible that we may have fallen off of those goals. And rather than, approaching that with curiosity, with kindness, with gentleness, with empathy, we tend to want to put a bit more pressure on ourselves. So I want to think about the idea of rest within that framework. I know I can say this for myself because I've done a lot of thinking around it. And it's from the way I grew up, the kinds of things that I read or watched, or the kinds of people that I listened to. But I think for me, and I feel like a lot of us though were taught that whether directly or indirectly, that productivity equals your worth. The amount of stuff that you can pump out, your output equals your worthiness. That being busy is a sign that you're hardworking, you're doing well, and that if you're resting too much is a sign of laziness. And I know this is definitely, I'm just thinking back to when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I used to admire people that seemed like they had so much going on. They seemed like they had the energy to do all these things, and they just seemed like very productive. And to me, it was like, this is something to aspire to. This is how it should be. These people are disciplined. And that may be true, but I think what ended up happening is that I was comparing myself, comparing my energetic predisposition. I'm an introvert, and comparing that and expecting myself to do as much as other people do, which is just a false way to approach productivity and rest. I over time and just from trial and error and questioning and learning, I've learned that I'm not the kind of person that can just be busy, 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 busy. I need downtime. I need time to recharge and re-energize myself because that's just not how I'm built. That's just not my makeup. But for a long time I would see people that seemed to run in like a bottomless amount of energy, and I would be envious and I would try to make myself into that kind of person, so that to the point where I saw rest as being me being a lazy person, right? And I would feel badly about resting. I would think that slowing down was like a reward for a task completed, a thing checked off my to-do list. I will rest when I'm done so. I think the problem with that is, with that kind of mindset, you never really get to a point where it's enough, where you've done enough and you can actually quote unquote rest, because as adults we know that there's just always things that we can be doing. There are always items in our to-do list that we can be checking off, and as soon as you're done the one thing, it's like, oh, I can do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You never really actually get time to rest like you've promised yourself that you would. So you can have like a really productive day. Well, in the past I would have like a really productive day but still feel like, oh, I'm behind. There's still so much that I should be doing. And so that when I finally sit down to rest, my mind doesn't actually register it as rest. It still feels like it's something that I haven't yet earned, because there's so much more that I could be doing. And I think that's sort of why it feels uncomfortable. It's not because rest is wrong or rest is bad. It's because rest really as a concept, as a thing, conflicts with the internal rules that we live by, that we set for ourselves, whether we know it or we don't know it, or whether we're aware of it or we're unaware. And I think there's also like something seasonal about this whole phenomenon. Winter naturally forces us to slow down. It's cold, it's snowy, we're not outside. The inclination to be outside doing things is not as strong as if it were spring or summer or even fall, when the weather is much nicer. We have less daylight. Personally, for me, my energy levels are way lower, and so I'm spending more of my time indoors. And I think our bodies are so smart. They're asking us, they're taking cues from the season and asking us to slow down, to rest, to hibernate, and to really take this time to just be and recuperate and gather strength and energy for the seasons to come, the seasons where we can actually be outside and be doing things and be expending our energy that way. However, um, culturally, I think as a society, we're not really allowed to honor that. We're told to like push through. We still have to wake up every single day at whatever freaking time and get ready, go to work, do the grind, and do all the things and try and check off our to-do lists. Culturally, we don't care that it's winter and that we should be honoring that biological call and need for rest. We're expected to keep the same sort of pace year round regardless of the season, and to maintain high output, be constantly high energy, and to be constantly making progress in whatever shape or form that may look like. And then you sort of layer that in with the first quarter of the year, when you started your year with all these goals and all these intentions and all these plans and like a vision of what you want, of who you want to be. And so then when your energy dips, which is normal because of the time of the year Q1 happens to fall in, you start to feel like you're failing, right? Like you're behind. But then instead of adjusting, we just sort of tend to push harder. We tend to push, ignoring our body's call for rest, and then we inevitably burn out. So personally, one of the biggest mindset shifts that I've been working on, and this is not like a recent thing, it's I've been talking to my therapist about it for a while now. This was something that I was really struggling with last year. But one of the mindset shifts that I've really been working on is just drumming it into my head that rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's an essential part of being productive. You cannot build a sustainable life by constantly operating at full capacity, high energy, 100% output. It's just impossible. You build a sustainable life by understanding your energy and working with it. So this goes back to what I was talking about, understanding that I am an introvert and I'm not built to constantly be on the go. I need to build in time to rest, to relax, to be really fully by myself and not have things rattling around in my brain. I need time to really decompress and recharge so that I can get up the next day and put in as much as I can, as much energy as I can into the things that matter to me. And so, rest allows you to, like, true rest allows you to think more clearly, make better decisions, and show up with more intention. And without, true deep rest, everything just sort of becomes reactive. You're really just trying to get through the day, and just get things done so that you can do it all over again tomorrow. But I think the part that's really hard to accept though is rest never really feels productive in the moment. You don't get that immediate feedback, especially if you spend, as I have, and I think as most of us have, if you spent your whole life believing that rest equals laziness. And so being able to sort of shift that, make that mindset change into understanding that rest is a part of productivity is not something that you get like immediate like satisfaction or understanding from. You just sort of have to trust the process. You don't see results right away, but something is happening underneath. It's a quiet sort of building and it can be easy to dismiss. But because, something doesn't look productive, it might just be chilling on your couch, um, reading a book or working on a crochet project or a hobby. Um, maybe that's your form of rest, but just because it does not look productive does not mean it's useless or it's not valuable. So, like I said, a lot of us feel like rest is reward for something completed, but the reality is there's just always going to be something to do, and so you never really truly get to rest. So I think part of the process of unlearning all of this is to be able to rest without justification. You can just rest because you're tired. You can just rest because your body needs it. You can just rest because you want to, just because. Just because you don't need, sometimes you don't need a reason, and that's fine. Rest should not be the reward for when everything's done, for when you've checked off your to-do list. And this can feel very uncomfortable at first, but I think that's sort of part of the point. It's like a muscle that you're going to have to build essentially, just sort of leaning into that discomfort. Over time, what you'll begin to realize is that you don't need to push yourself to the point of exhaustion before you deserve rest. And rest doesn't have to be a dramatic thing. Rest doesn't have to be like I think I just mentioned examples of you sitting on the couch reading a book, or working on a crochet project. Rest can look like whatever you want it to look like. It doesn't have to be a full day off. It doesn't have to be a vacation. In like a busy season of life, rest can mean maybe you log off a little bit earlier from work than usual if that's something you can do. I personally take advantage of that. I've been taking advantage of that in the super busy work season that I've been in. Um, Rest can mean having a slower start to like your Saturday morning and being more intentional about like waking up or sleeping in. Maybe you don't sleep until like 10 a.m. or whatever, but maybe you wake up at your normal 6 a.m. if you're an early riser, but rather than getting up and going right away, you just enjoy 30 minutes to an hour just luxuriating in bed, just lounging in bed and doing nothing, maybe playing on your phone, whatever. Rest could also look like doing one thing at a time instead of multitasking. It could look like going for a walk without listening to music or a podcast, or just leaving your phone at home while you go for that walk. It could look like saying no, which can be very hard to do, to something that will drain you. So rest ultimately could just look like small decisions that signal to your body, okay, it's safe to slow down, you're fine. And I think those small moments really truly matter. So if you're trying to lean into this radical idea of rest, it can feel uncomfortable at first, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, it's bad, or that you're lazy. It just means that you're really truly learning how to exist without constantly proving your worth through productivity or output. And you're really learning to listen to your body instead of overriding it or ignoring it. And you're learning also, really, I think, in a sense, to build a life that's not just about productivity and output, but to build a life that's sustainable. So if your energy feels kind of low right now, if your motivation's dipping, whatever the case may be, maybe the answer is not to double down and push even harder. Maybe what you could do is respond a little bit differently, with a little more awareness, with a little more patience, with a little more empathy. Just give yourself that chance and opportunity to rest without turning it into something that has to be earned. That's all I have to share, my friends, for today. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode and maybe watching this episode. You might be watching on YouTube. Please make sure to check out the YouTube channel, subscribe. Let's grow it together. I work very hard on these episodes and these videos, so your support by subscribing would mean the world to me. I will have all the details listed in the show notes. I will also have all my social media listed in the show notes as well. But that's all I have to share today. Thank you so much for spending the last 20 something minutes with me. I really appreciate you, and I hope you give yourself the chance to rest today, this weekend, whenever you might be listening to it, and rest in a way that makes the most sense to you, and rest because your body needs rest, not because you've earned it, if that makes sense. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time in another episode. But until then, take care and goodbye.